great to catch up with you again, man. I loved our interview from years ago.
Well, hopefully I'll follow up with some new information that is just as exciting.
I have no doubt you will. Yeah, I have no doubt. And it's weird because the theme of what I kind of want to get into is that was a whole different world. That was the pre-COVID BC world.
Sure, sure. Yeah.
So,
It's interesting. I mean, not to talk about it too much, but just the things that we have in common now
yeah,
as a result of that shared experience, you
yeah.
know. And even within that, there are different perspectives, but there is something essential that we can all relate to.
It was a global phenomenon. There was always these little epicenters of things that would happen in our human history, but to have something that actually penetrated the entire globe and affected all of us in very specific ways is wild.
Sure. I mean, COVID was the new Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
You know,
Speaking of,
yeah,
we're we're
right.
we're we're all still swimming in euphoria here. Like, what
Yeah, I
what
feel
just
that.
happened?
I feel that. Yeah.
It's
I
wild.
remember, I grew up down in that part of the country, so I remember the all the major religions, football being one,
Yes.
with the two different tribes of college versus professional.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a weird world. Yeah, and that's the thing. Everybody on the coast, like I was talking to a lot of people that were over by San Francisco in that area. They're like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, I'm not really a fan." And I think when you're in big epicenters, big cities, there's so much going on. There's so many different things happening. It's
Right, your
not a
attention
central.
is divided.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, with a lot of interesting shit.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Without a
yeah,
doubt, yeah,
yeah.
and I just heard today that that game was the highest rated show in the history of TV, which is totally
That's
wild.
that's remarkable. They must be counting streams too,
Yeah,
because I think in a sense that makes sense, right?
yeah,
Because just in terms of the logistics and how we consume, if they're counting every single phone that was tuned in on an airplane and
yeah,
all of that, right? There's so many, whereas we used to gather around one TV,
uh-huh, yep,
so how do
yeah,
you count that?
yeah, exactly, yeah, it's that the ante's been up, but it's great to reconvene. Fellowship is the new album, and I wanna begin our conversation. I'm getting a little fatigued with just talking about COVID, but I think it's a tapestry of what we all lived through, and it's affected the way we've
Yeah.
gone forward. How did you get through that time period, and how did it change you?
Well, I'm not sure that my reactions to the situation are really that different than everyone else's, other than the fact that, as musicians, our livelihood is we can't work remotely, basically.
Yeah,
And there's just something that is essential about the bond between artist and audience and artist and artist. So there is a lot of uh emotional currency that is exchanged in a performance between all the people in the room, and so you just don't get that when you're putting together your Brady Bunch videos of multi-tracked uh you know arrangements. So what I opted to do was use the first few weeks. I just started making my own projects and teaching myself how to use Logic and really like embracing the opportunity to have some extra time and finish some projects that have been sitting on my desk, so to speak. And so I wrote some music, and then I got pretty lonely. And one day I got a call from a friend who used to work at another jazz club, and he mentioned to me that he was helping a friend of his out at their restaurant, helping to put together to-go orders to have something to do, and he'd be running the bar. And if I wanted to come in and order something to go, maybe he'd hold my order for a while so I could sit and have a drink with him. And so my wife and I went down there one night and we ordered some food to go, and we sat for a few minutes and there was nobody in the place. So he threw us in a back dining room and we had our first dinner out in like May of 2020. And that situation turned into a meeting place. And we used to set up meetings amongst friends to socially distance and have a couple of drinks together and feel normal. So we did that every Friday. Then one of the guys had some backline, and he said, "Hey, you know, if I set up some backline, you got this outdoor dining now. Let's have some music outside." And so we started playing every Friday night out in front of this restaurant, and I started writing a bunch of new music. And when winter came, I found that I was pretty disappointed that we could no longer gather and play even once a week outdoors. So I asked my wife if it would be okay if I invited the cats to the apartment and we could play a little concert in the living room. And so I did it anyway. And she and our next door neighbor, Joni Rose, who we just celebrated her 89th birthday. And Joni's a party animal. She's no shrinking violet at all. You know, I would make a pot of food on Friday and it would feed everyone. And then she would make a completely separate meal in her apartment. And we would go over there afterwards and she would make to go trays for all the guys.
Wow.
So, you know, that became our little weekly oasis in the island of misery that was lockdown COVID, you know. Um, so yeah, a lot of this music was conceived of in order to kind of articulate in some way our shared experience. And you know, I the fellowship was really the thing that I missed most with as I mentioned before, the musicians and the audience. And so we had this little pretend situation in the apartment where we were playing sets to people and playing new music and challenging ourselves to feel normal.
Yeah. Well, on a visceral level, I know it's mid-February, but we're approaching the 4-year anniversary. It has to feel good to have a new album out, live shows, all of that. Just from that perspective, how does it feel?
Well, you know, the live shows are really the thing. That's what I enjoy the most because that's where the surprises are happening 100% of the time. And you know, as soon as we started kind of playing out in public again, I just I told myself, please don't take this for granted again. Please don't get jaded. Please don't, you know, I'll say this. I've noticed a little difference in the audiences over the last few years since we've started playing again, that I think the excitement may have worn off a little bit for them. Uh, I hope not, but you know, we have a lot of distractions in our life, and sometimes I think people um, don't realize how rewarding it is to be engaged with live music. That that you're, you know, as I tell the audiences a lot of times, you're at a live basketball game instead of listening to it on the radio. We can listen to a basketball game on the radio, but we don't see what's happening in between the call. We don't see the person who's getting in position. We don't see the glances, the motioning. We don't see any of that kind of communication that's going on the court. And the same thing is true when you see live music. There's all kinds of communication that's going on. It's very subtle, but there are surprises constantly. And I think whenever I'm able to remind people that that's happening and that they hear me say that, and then they engage with the music, I mean, it's just always a great night. So, you know, and this music was born of a desire to share with an audience in that way. So, you know, I'm a human being and I have to remind myself of that all the time. But I certainly never leave the gig feeling bad. I always leave the gig feeling great, even when I think, oh man, the trains are messed up and I gotta leave extra time to get to the gig and I gotta wash that transportation experience out of my palate before I try and approach music and you know all of that kind of stuff. But yeah, so now you ask now. I think the pandemic did teach me to be grateful for the opportunity to be a musician and to try and improve at something. and to be able to see your reflection every day and in that performance and try and get a little better the next day. I mean, I'm really grateful for that, and for all the musicians who challenge me and trust me, and know that I'm trying to provide, as a band leader, I'm trying to provide an environment for everyone to do what they do and to be able to take chances and experiment and find the best version of themselves. I want to create that environment. So yeah, I love all of that.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from Fellowship?
I hope they feel that. I hope they feel that, you know, the this recording was produced by Orrin Evans, and Orrin Evans and I have known each other for a very long time, and we understand each other as human beings. So it's really wonderful to be associated in a situation with Imani Records where uh, I feel both understood and supported in every possible way. Um, so when I want the listener to hear that, I want them to hear the relationship between the musicians and the fact that every Friday night, Joni sat at our breakfast bar with my wife and cheered us on, and Kush played a cymbal and a snare drum, and that was it, sitting in our living room. And Joseph brought his bass over, and we had to fold his uh, big, huge bag. It folded up and put it under a table so it wasn't just everywhere in the apartment, because a bass bag and a bass are both really large for a New York apartment. um, I want them to hear that I had to teach myself how to tune a piano, and I didn't do a great job, but I did a job, and I learned a lot every time I did it. And my family hid from me while I was doing it because they couldn't bear to hear me get frustrated one more time. You know, it's that's all in there. That's all in there. Yeah, it's it was really a time that kind of helped me uh, decide exactly who I want to be and how I want to engage with the idea of being a musician. And so in that sense, I feel like my North Star is brighter than ever.
So if anyone wants to pick up Fellowship, learn, see live shows that you got going on, anything going down, how can they do that?
Well, my website is usually up to date. Every once in a while, I'm reminded that it's not, but that website is jazzbone.org, jazzbone.org. You can find out what's going on Instagram at jazzbone13, on Facebook as well. And if you're interested in listening to the music or purchasing the music, the best choice is for the label and artists alike is Bandcamp. So you can find that, David Gibson Fellowship, the Imani Records. You can just do a search and find that on Bandcamp.
Right on. David, it's always a pleasure, man. Thank you. It was
Hey, thank
stellar.
you.
Yes.
Thank you, Joe.